Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Gosh, it feels like it's been a while.
Yeah, apologies to our buzzies. We did not record last week. I was in St. Louis Monday through Wednesday. Caught a little cold while I was there and came back and canceled on Thursday, and then we had pushed it to Friday, but then you had something come up, and so we're doing a double header today.
Twofer. It's a twofer Tuesday, everybody.
There we go.
How was St. Louis?
It was good.
What were you doing there?
We were checking out seminary candidates for GraceHill. So a team of us went down to interview. It was fun. Got to show them the old stomping grounds. So Sheila Taylor had never been to the Arch, so we made sure we drove down to the Arch. She got to touch it and, get a picture with it. And then I took them to the Cathedral Basilica. If you've never been to St. Louis, I think it is a must-see. And you're like, it's just a church. It's not just a church. It is incredible. It is the most beautiful thing you'll ever see outside of going to Rome as far as church. I think there's 3 billion mosaic tiles that make up the entire ceiling. It's incredible. So anyways, so we went there.
That's
and
much.
Then
3 billion with a B?
Billion.
How old is that, approximately?
I don't know. You can ask Christine. Christine was like reading the pamphlets and stuff. Like she was one of those. I just like to look.
Yes. You just like to take it all in. Marvel at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
Nice.
unfortunately, the barbecue place that I absolutely love, Pappy's Barbecue, was not open on Mondays, so we didn't get to eat there. But yeah, it was good. Did the interviews. We interviewed 3 guys. I'm not sure if they're going to work out. We liked a couple of them, but they have to like us back, and they have other interviews too and stuff like that. So we'll have to see where that goes.
You should have sent more likable people.
I know. I was thinking about that afterwards. I was like, I did the majority of the talking. I don't know if that was the best plan. Like, maybe I should have just sat silently in the corner. So
Sheila,
yeah.
you talk.
Yeah. So, but I will say, all of us that walked away going, you know what? Like, the future of the church is in good hands. Like, all 3 guys we interviewed are fantastic and will be great guys. And so that was nice to see. It would have been awful if you go and you're like, oh boy. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's start from scratch, y'all.
Yeah. So, yeah. So we were there. I made them stay in the Cheshire Inn where Brady stays when he goes. It is an adventure, man.
Is that a super high class joint?
Oh, it is. It is not. It's something else. It's a creepy, like old. It's set up like a like little chateau.
Okay.
And
so far
it's got
sounds
all
good.
these big paintings. Every room is after an author.
Do the eyes?
Oh yeah,
move with you?
the paintings are it's got giant bear. It's got a speakeasy
Okay.
where you have to walk up to a bookshelf and pull a book.
Yeah.
And then the door opens and you can go into it. And it's
How
got
do you
a
know?
little-
How do you know which book?
There's an arrow.
Oh, well,
I know.
doesn't that sort of defeat the purpose?
Yeah. But, it looks cool. You pull a book and then it opens and you're going into this little like private, little speakeasy
Nice.
to sit and have a drink. And yeah, that was cool.
All right.
So what have you been up to?
Well, see, you were out of town, so I got a few extra naps in, which I felt great.
Well, you are old.
I know.
Yeah.
You know the thing about, I wake up at 4 o'clock every day. 4 a.m.
Why?
No alarm. That's what old people do. 4 a.m.
Is this new?
It's relatively new.
Is it because you have to pee?
No.
You just get up?
I chug a ton of water before I go to bed because I feel like I'm always behind on the water intake. So drinking a ton of water right before you go to sleep is a great idea.
No.
That's usually like a 2 o'clock wake up type of deal.
Yeah.
No, 4 a.m. is the, okay, what are we doing?
Do you get up or do you just lay there?
I laid there. I have this little mental battle of maybe I'll just get up and work out or read, Or maybe I'll just lay here and really try to go back to sleep. And today I laid there and tried to go back to sleep. Then I got up at 5. So,
Wow.
yeah. It's not ideal, buddy. Not ideal. Makes for long days. And I'm ready for dinner at 3 p.m.
Thing, you go to bed at 8 o'clock.
Early bird special.
Yeah.
We tried last night. We tried to go to bed at 8:30, and that doesn't always, as you can imagine and probably relate to, it doesn't always quite work out.
The family doesn't cooperate.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well,
Otherwise,
I'm not having that issue. I'm having get out of bed and everything hurts issues. So I'm wearing my knee brace again.
oh no. What'd you do?
I hurt myself in St. Louis. The bed was I don't know why you're laughing. The bed had like a big bed wooden frame around it, you know? Like, and it sat out like about 6 inches from the bed.
Oh.
So I got up in the middle of the night to pee and didn't turn on any lights because I was like, I don't want to wake up. Like I just want to hurry and pee and get back in bed.
Yes.
And so like I was like doing my little shuffle run, like because you don't want to run in a hotel room, but I was cold because I dropped the air to like 60, so I can bundle up, And so I'm peeing and I run back to the room or run back to the bed and I, it's a good 6 inches out and like. What do they call that? Like hyperextended, where you hit it and your knee goes backwards a little bit.
Oh.
Yeah, like I'm trying to run around the bed to hop in and like hit it, and I was like, oh my god! I mean, took me down, and so I have a bruise right on the top of my kneecap. But like,
This is your bad knee?
this is my bad knee,
As fortune would have it.
But I mean, like each morning I wake up right now,
Yeah.
like I'm like limping, like it's like. All the way through the knee that it's just like stiff and tight, and so
That's not good.
I'm old.
Have you been icing it?
No,
Oh, you should ice it.
tough it out.
I know. Why do we do it? We know what helps,
Yeah.
and we just refuse. We just refuse to do it.
Yeah. Which is just like our message for today. We know what we should do, but we just don't do it.
What's wrong with us?
What is wrong with
I was
us?
thinking about it this morning. What do you call it? Like dirty, wretched, black-hearted sinners?
Yes.
Is that the line?
Yes. Dirty, rich,
You usually do that
black-hearted
during
sin.
baptisms when you call the babies dirty.
You little loudmouth keeping everybody up all night. Yeah,
Indeed, we are.
we are.
Yeah.
Yep. But
Sermon on the Mount.
yeah, we got a twofer here.
Let's
Yeah.
do it.
So yeah, we're going through the whole book of Matthew, but like I said, we're going to do some little sub-series. Take our time here in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus' longest sermon. And the first week was really setting up the Sermon on the Mount. We were talking about what Jesus is after in this sermon, and there's one big theme that he keeps coming back to over and over again in the Sermon on the Mount, and it's this idea that he is. So previously to this point, he. Everyone thought of righteousness, like the most holy person was the Pharisees and the scribes, because what they did was they looked through the entire Old Testament. They looked at every time God commanded anything. They found 613 times that God commanded something, and they memorized them, and then tried to live by them, and then took them even further than that. I gave the example of like tithing. Like God talks about giving a tenth of what you have to the church. And he's talking about money, like resources. And they would go so far as to even tithe their spices. And Jesus would call them out on this. Like, you tithe your spices to the church, but then you wouldn't give $1 to your family because you say, oh, what I'm giving is already going to the church, stuff like that. So what Jesus is saying is like, look, you guys... The whole world thinks of these people as righteous. And he goes, but that's all external. That's all for show. That's all for everyone else to see. He said, I'm after your hearts, because the reality is these Pharisees while externally they are very righteous, their hearts are far from me. And what I want is you to transform your heart, not focus so much on the behavior, but focus on the heart. And then when the heart is changed, the behavior would change. Because what Jesus is after, it's not behavior modification. God is not just trying to get you to act better. God is trying to change your heart, to change who you are, to transform you. He doesn't just want you to do less bad things. He's not trying to make you a better person. He's trying to make you a new person. And there's a huge difference. But what's interesting is since that sermon, I've had at least a half dozen people that have reached out to me to be like, okay, I've always wondered about this. These commands in the Old Testament, like especially in Leviticus, if you have an unbeliever in your family, you're supposed to kill him. If like all these like weird, crazy, what about all these commands? Like, what are we supposed to do with this? When did these get it? Because the other part of that is Jesus, as he's saying this, he goes, do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them, meaning that they still are there. Like, he's not saying they don't matter anymore. And so people are like, what do we do with this Old Testament stuff? Like Leviticus, and especially if you're doing the Old Testament readings with us right now.
Coming up on it.
We're weird.
Yeah.
We're in Leviticus now, and it's like, what is all this stuff? Why did God care about all these little details of, like tucking your cloak to your,
it's gotta be this color.
Yeah.
It's gotta be this size.
Yeah, it's gotta be, yeah. And so there's 3 stages to this that you have to catch. First, Adam and Eve. God's intention for human beings is to be in a face-to-face, holy relationship with him. When he made Adam and Eve, it said that he would walk among them in the garden, that he would see them face to face, that he would be with them, and that's what he wants. That's what he's after. But the only way that can happen, because he is a holy and pure God, he cannot be. You cannot bring sinfulness and brokenness and all of that in front of him. He can't be among that. And so in order to be in his presence, because he is pure and he is holy and he is righteous and sacred, all the sin around him he has to expel, we have to be holy and pure and sinless in order to be with him. And so Adam and Eve, they were, until they fell. Then things are separated. And so then God is saying, okay, I don't want to abandon my people. I'm in heaven and they're on earth. I don't want to abandon them. I want to be with them. His desires to be, when you look in Exodus and he's leading them by fire at night, and he's speaking on the mountain, and he's clouded, but he's on the mountain with Moses. And when Moses sees him, his face glows, and when they have the tabernacle, the Holy of Holies, he's there and he's present among them in the desert. And then when they build Jerusalem, he's holy and he's in the Holy of Holies inside the temple. And so he says, look, I want you to be a people set apart for me. I don't want you to have the customs of the world. I don't want you to look like the world. I don't want you to be like the world in any way. And in order for me to be in your presence, you have to be serious about your holiness as well. There are things that you have to purge out of your presence. We can't have, all this other stuff that represents all these other gods and represents all these other things, you have to be a holy, set apart people. And if you are, I will bless you. I mean, goodness, look at Exodus, the times that God takes out armies for them and God leads them, feeds them miraculously. God isn't feeding America with manna. He's not making water come from rocks for America. Like he did miraculous things through these people, for these people. And it works because, as the Israelites come into, like, you take the story of Rahab, she says, like, we know, like, as they come into Jericho, she tells the Israelite spies, like, we know the stories of what your God is doing for you. Like, it was a miraculous thing. And he was like, in order for us to have this relationship, you have to purge out all of this. And so that's what the Old Testament, we call them the laws of Moses, the Mosaic laws. That's what all the laws was to set his people out to be a distinct, set apart people, holy and righteous, so that he could be among them. Then, that's stage 2. Stage 3 is Israel rebels, Israel rebels, Israel rebels, Israel rebels. The Ark of the Covenant is taken. God throws them into captivity. God leaves the holy city. And so stage 3 is Jesus comes. And Jesus is God and is among his people face to face. But because he is human and God, he can be among them, and he can be among their sin, and he can teach them about God. And he says, look, I've come to fulfill everything of the Old Testament. Like, in me, all of those things are going to be fulfilled, and I'm going to make a new covenant, a new relationship with my people. And whereas previously, God the Father had his relationship with the Israelites, God the Son has come to make a relationship and a covenant with all people of all time, of all places, that all of us can come to him in this new way. And when the temple curtain is torn at Jesus' death, it's to show that all of us can come in. There is no more Holy of Holies and only the Israelites and only the Jews, and only, like all of us can come in. And so those Mosaic laws, those don't apply to us anymore, because we are not Israelites. We are not the Jews. We are not. That was specific to them. Yeah. But the law still remains, and the law is the 10 Commandments. That's the law. That's the law that remains. So, people have asked, like, where can I see a list of the 613? I'm sure you can find it somewhere. Like, just Google it. But also remember, like, that's not a lot of those. Anything that pertains to the 10 Commandments, yes, that's the law that we still obey. But the Mosaic laws, the things that made them distinct, and some of them you read and you're like, that's so stupid. Why does he care what color they wear, and why does he care how they braid their hair? Because they were distinct from the peoples around them.
Right.
They weren't supposed to look like them. They were supposed to look like his people, and so he has all this, and some of it, I don't know why he says it, but he does.
He does.
And like
there's a lot we don't know.
Like
or understand.
One of the guys was texting me. He was like, what about killing the unbeliever? Like that. If you started worshiping another god, like that sounds like a mission field, not a kill them. And it's like, okay, well, God was doing something different at that time. Like it's almost like a cancer, where all of a sudden one person starts worshiping the God of the village over. All of a sudden he convinces 2 and 3 and 4. And all of a sudden God's people are corrupted. And God cares more about your salvation than he does your temporary time on this earth. Like the most important thing to God is that you are with him forever, not how long you have on this earth. And God knows hearts, and he knows, okay, this person, when they stand defiant and they're going to, worship Baal, their heart is far from me. And I'd rather have them be taken out of this situation before they convert more people to fall to Baal, and more people are lost for eternity. And so at that time, as God saw it, as he was in their presence and he was with his people, it was better to remove the cancer to save the body. Yeah. And that's how he looked at it. Is that harsh? Sure. But God was serious about his holiness. And he was serious about his people and his righteousness. And he was serious that, like, you are to be mine. And I'll do anything to protect you guys. So yeah, that all came up there. But the big takeaway was this, that what happens is when we are focused as a church on only looking good on the outside, we become what the world calls us, which is hypocrites. Yeah. In Jesus, in the Sermon on the Mount, he calls us to be people that are focused on being transformed on the inside, not looking good on the outside. That honestly, we should be willing to be open and transparent and truthful about what's happening on the outside. That our outside ought to look like what's going on inside. That people ought to see our struggles and hear us confess and repent of our struggles. to say, like, I'm not okay. I am struggling in this way. I am, it's okay to not be okay. It's not okay to stay there, though.
Mm-hmm.
That we ought to talk about our transformation and our growth.
Yeah, and how do you even give that any focus? How do you put any effort into it if all the effort is put into pretending or acting like
Right.
things are fine?
Right.
Putting on the face, the mask of, hey, we're great. No, you may not be great, but we're great. I think it robs people of the opportunity to be honest, not just with others, but with themselves about where they're off track.
And the coolest thing about it is this. God said, when my church gets this, when they will stop worrying about how they look on the outside and trying to pretend that everything's okay on the outside, and they will instead be honest and be working on the inside, transformed on the inside, God says, it's out of your weakness that I am, that you are strong. It's out of your failures that my glory reigns. Because I made the reference to the ugly dog contest, which that got some good comments too. Some people looked that up afterwards and they were like, okay, there's some hideous dogs out there.
Yeah.
And I was like, yep. But that's the beauty of our God, is in our weakness. As we sit there and we say, I struggle in this way. I'm struggling with jealousy. I'm struggling with lying. I'm struggling with my anger. I'm struggling with this. Like, other people can relate to us because they go, whoa, I do too. Yeah. Why do you admit that? Like we're supposed to hide that stuff. Mm-hmm. And then when they hear, but I'm loved anyways, and I'm forgiven,
yeah,
and I'm redeemed. That's the message of the gospel, that we are loved in spite of our struggles. Mm-hmm. That's the gospel that changes people's lives. Not, hey, act. A lot of the outside people of the world, they think, well, in order to go to church, you have to act like you got it all figured out, and then like you're accepted. And that's not the truth. It's, we come together and we admit where we really are, and we're accepted, and loved, and forgiven exactly where we are.
Right. I think you alluded to it, or you actually just mentioned it directly. To pray to God to help you turn from those sins, like you're acknowledging them,
right.
You're being open about them, but then also to pray for guidance and protection, from yourself, really.
Yeah. Save me from myself.
Save me from myself. Yeah.
I mean, that's a prayer you ought to be praying.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because, we are our own worst enemies. I mean, that there's a reason that's a pretty common statement, that's put out there. Calling it out and confessing those sins is very important, but that next step has got to be, now, Lord, thank you for forgiving me. Help me to march forward on a path that you would have for me, and keep my focus and my eyes on you, not on the things of this world, and not these sins that are very regular for me and for you and for everybody else.
Right. And then the second part of that sermon was this. Jesus said, when my church gets this point and they start working on transforming the inside instead of focusing on the outside, then they will be the salt of the earth. Mm-hmm. And what he meant by that, salt at that time was a preservative. You would pack meat in salt so that you would protect it and save it for months, years even. And he's saying, like, look, when my church starts acting this way, where we're honest about where we are, we preserve one another. We hold on to the integrity of what he calls us to be. That, like, he's like, I want a place where we're not trying to fake it, where we're and being that for one another, we preserve that true mark of who we are as a church, that humility that we need. And so we're that salt for the world, that we preserve the true picture of who God wants us to be on the earth, that he can, city on a hill, he can point to and say, that's what I want for everybody, that we need to be that salt. And then also he says, in the same way, you don't hide a light, like light gives off into the darkness. It shines in the darkness. And you are to be that light in the darkness of where people see there is a way out, there is hope, there is, redemption that can be found. Like I don't have to Because you have two types of people on the outside. You have the people that are acting like everything's okay and they're faking it and they're hypocrites. And then you have the people that say, I could never be that, and they give up. Yeah. And so, like, that light into the darkness shines to them saying, no, you're loved exactly where you are. And we're inviting you into something greater, like where you don't have to stay that way. You can come. And so we're called to live this out, to be a light to the world, so that as people look at the church, they say, they have something I want. Yeah. They have an honesty, a confidence, an integrity. They're not being fake. They're being real about what they're at, but they're also walking in confidence and love because they know that they are loved and they are forgiven and I see them changing and that we are to be this example. And then the thing I ended with is this. It is not our goal to be a city on a hill or to be the light. Mm-hmm. It's not like we should not be saying, I want to make my life look in such a way that people want my life.
Right.
We are simply to focus on Jesus, and Jesus will use us.
Yeah.
To do that.
Yeah, light reflectors, light bearers.
Right, like the moon.
Yeah.
He's the sun, we're the moon.
That's right. We were talking about it in small group last week, just reflecting back on the video with Chris Altman's, his testimony, and how his life has been really transformed, and then people notice something is different about him. They're looking at him and they're like, "Yep, you're a different kind of person." Yeah. And I think I thought a lot about that video during your message, because he's got people coming to him
going, "What is this?
What is this?" Yeah. And because he is a real guy and he's open, that they find.
And the goal is not to live in a way with that motivation of like, I want people to see this in me. The goal is to just be genuine, to follow Jesus, and Jesus will use it.
Yeah.
Jesus will bring the people to you. And that's what we talked about, is the church is the hope of the world, because in the church, God doesn't just save one type of person. He saves people from all education backgrounds, whether you got a degree or not, all home backgrounds, whether you grew up in a great home or a horrible home, economic status, personalities, life stories, politics, like all come together, all, grow in this way where we are transformed by Jesus, and we're a vast community of different types of people and backgrounds, yet we come together around him. Mm-hmm. And when people see this, they're going to go, I want to be a part of that. Whatever that is, I want to be a part of that. And he's going to use it. And that's what we talked about. That's the intro to the City on a Hill series, or the Sermon on the Mount. Mm-hmm. That's what we're called to be, and Jesus will do that. And then the second part, or the rest of the Sermon on the Mount, he's going to call out certain areas of life and go deeper into them. And that was for this week, the PG-13 kind of lesson here, as we get into lust and divorce and marriage and. But that's the first thing Jesus goes into is, okay, let's talk about marriage and divorce and lust. Because look, like, I think a lot of times we think our sin or our wild living, like we invented that. Like, no. Like, remember Jesus' day. He was alive. I mean, like, Alexander the Great was 300 years before Jesus. Like, there was huge culture already, like, and the Greeks and the Romans were alive and well, like those cultures and that debauchery and sexual practices and divorce and like this was happening back in Moses's day, where like people were just getting divorced like crazy, just like, I'm leaving you, I'm going to that person. Well, are you leaving me, or are we divorced? Are we separated, or are we divorced? That's not a brand new concept. That was happening in Moses' time. Yeah. Like, literally, like, people are just like, a million people in the desert, and they're like, hey, I'm going to go hop into that tent tonight. Mm-hmm. And they're swapping partners, and they're, and so what happens is Moses says not that he condones the activity, but you guys can't just say, hey, we're done. And what does that? And, the wife's like, well, what does that mean? What does we're done mean? Like for tonight? Like, are you just angry? Are you coming back? He goes, if you're leaving your wife, you better give her a certificate of divorce. There ought to be something tangible that says we are legally done. And so these guys were doing that. Like, okay, I'm done with you. Certificate of divorce, here you go. I'm done. I want to be with this person now. And and they could say it for anything, just leave her. And so that was the practice that was happening up until Jesus' day in the Jewish culture, was give her a certificate of divorce, go get a new wife, whatever you want to do. And so long as you had a reason to write down, so long as you gave her a certificate, it's not adultery. You're not cheating on her.
Look, here's the paper.
Yeah, here's the paper.
Right,
it's not adultery.
It says we're done.
Yeah, we're done. Move out.
Yeah.
I'm moving this woman in. It's not adultery. And so that's what Jesus is dealing with as he comes on the scene. And he goes, look, I want to talk about this divorce thing you guys are doing. He goes, just because you give her a certificate of divorce doesn't mean it's not adultery. And they go, it's like alarm bells going off, like, whoa, like, what did he just say? Like, Moses told us we were allowed to do that. Like, Moses said this. He goes, no, Moses gave you a concession because your hearts were hard and because you guys were doing just absolute debauchery and it was a mess. But I'm telling you that not only is that still adultery, because you're just leaving your oath, you're leaving your spouse, and you're just going to a new person. I'm telling you that you want to know what kind of people we're called to be? Adultery isn't just a physical act. Even if you lust after a woman in your heart, you're committing adultery. Like, can you imagine how radical that was to these people who are walking around just like, walking up to their wives, here's your certificate, have a nice life. Like, if you even think about a woman lustfully, that's adultery.
I think of that monkey meme. It's like a GIF where the monkey goes.
Oh, where he's looking sideways? Yeah.
And all I could think of was in church on Sunday morning. People were like,
uh-oh.
Don't move. Be as still as a statue. Don't move.
But I mean, like, I remember there was a I don't know how much I want to say. There was a guy, when I was growing up, there was a guy going to our church who was like a family friend, and I was over at their house, and hanging out with their son, and they all went to church with us regularly every week, and like his dad said something about going to a strip club, like with his friend, like that they went when they were like somewhere, and I was like, what? You go? Like, I didn't think my dad had ever been. I don't know, and he was like, oh, she didn't care. She just said, look, but don't touch, and I remember thinking like, oh, like, okay, so that's okay for, like, Christians just look, but don't touch, like.
You get out your notebook.
Yeah.
Apparently this is okay.
Yes.
To-do list.
Yes. So long as you look but don't touch. And I remember that, like, and I think for a lot of people, if you were to ask them what is cheating, because I get into this all the time in our marriage counseling, like, we're just having an emotional affair. Well, what the crap is that? An emotional affair? Like, we're not doing anything physical. We're just spending a lot of time together talking about, like all our problems, talking about how happy we make each other, like, like, and it's like, okay, is that really cheating? Like, is that I'm spending all this time? And Jesus is stepping back and going, what does your heart want? Is your heart fiercely faithful to your spouse right now? Because if it's not, it's adultery. And that just sets everybody back. And they go, well, but I'm not actually doing anything. We haven't kissed. We haven't, like, we're not going to have sex. We're not going to, like, and Jesus goes, is your heart fiercely faithful to your spouse? Because if not, that's adultery. If you are not every day saying, repenting of, and look, that's the thing. Jesus isn't saying like, we're going to be perfect at this.
Right.
I mean, I will admit this as your pastor if you think I'm, like, of course, when a smoking hot woman, scantily clad comes walking into a room, does it catch my eye for a second? You bet. I'm a warm-blooded man. Like I that catches your eye and you're like, oh, okay. What you do in that next moment is what Jesus is talking about. Yeah. Do I sit there with my, googling eyes? Right. Do I whistle and cat call and all that and stare and sit there and be like, oh my, I bet that would be, like that's a lucky man, or whatever you're thinking, or do I look at that and go, ah, gosh, that's not helping anything. Right. That's not, I have a good woman who loves me and takes good care of me. And, it's one of those things like, I've talked about this at some guys' events, if it was just you and your wife on a deserted island, that was the only woman you saw. Like, and that was it. I mean, how into her would you be? Like that's it. That's all I got. That's the only, Adam and Eve style. Like this is the only woman I've ever seen. This is the only woman. And God's going like, can you imagine how into your wife you would be if you were focused on her? And look, and Jesus goes, and for all of you that are so focused on the physical that you're missing out on the beauty. Like beauty is more than just physical. Like, I mean, I remember, as weird as it was, the way I knew I loved Joe differently than any other date or girl I had ever dated was when I saw her with her little nephew. And I remember we had only been dating, I don't know, a month. And we went up to meet her family and stuff. And the way she like grabbed that little baby and just snuggled him, I just immediately in my heart, I was like, I want to give her one of those. Like there was something attractive about the way her motherhood, like attracted me where I was like, oh man, like I'm in trouble, like we're still to this day, like she'll be doing something. I'm like, why are you doing it that way? And, like, and she makes me giggle, like, just like, what? You're making this like 5 times harder than it has to be, She's like, well, I was doing this because I wanted to do this. And I, like, and you're just like, you find these little, nuggets that only you get to know.
Yeah. This joy.
Yeah. And you find this joy. And the more you ask and the more you pursue and the more you, it reminds me of like Good Will Hunting. I love that movie. And where Matt Damon and Robin Williams are talking, and he's talking to him about relationships, and he's like, it's the things that only you get to know, that. And I think the line in that was like, she farts in her sleep and he blames it on the dog, when it wakes her up or something like that. And Matt Damon's laughing and stuff. He's like, that's the beauty of a marriage. It's like there's things only I get to know about her. And that I have spent, even her own family doesn't know these things about her. That as I get to know her at a deeper level. And God talks about like, look, the beauty of your spouse is deeper than just physical. Yeah. Like you should be pursuing them emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And that God says, look, lust will destroy your relationships. And the problem with our culture, and this is not new today, this was true in Jesus' day, is it is obsessed with sex. It is obsessed with sex. I can remember it as young as, middle school, when the very first, couples started being couples, and everybody was obsessed with like, have they kissed? Have they kissed? Are they holding hands? Are they, did they get to second base? Like, like there was just this obsession with sex. And then it gets worse in middle school and high school and college, where, college, good gosh, like my college experience at UCF, that was a free-for-all. I mean, I can remember parties where, doors would be open and people would be going at it. And you're just like watching and looking and you're like, what is, like girls are on tables butt naked, dancing and, for hundreds of people watching and cheering and throwing beers, and
Note to self, do not send my daughters to UCF.
No, it always gets ranked as one of the top party schools. Like I remember every Valentine's Day, there was a lingerie party. Like there was this one sorority that would throw a lingerie party where every girl was in lingerie, and they charged like $20, and it was a circus. I mean, it was just a madhouse, and it was crazy. And so like what I'm saying is like our culture is obsessed with sex. And we get warped and we get shaped by this, and it impacts our relationships, it impacts our marriages, it impacts the way we date, it impacts the way we move in together, it impacts and it's just, and God goes, look, it's gonna destroy you if you don't get control over it. Because the reality is most of the marriage counseling I do, at least at some level, if it's not the main issue for the guy, it's one of the main issues.
And if it isn't, it probably actually is.
Right. And it's something that we need to address as a church, because if we don't talk about it as a church, then everyone's going to get all of their information elsewhere. And all of their what's right for me and what I deserve. Yep. And so as a church, we got to talk about this, that we need to pursue our spouses. And intimacy is important, but it's not the main thing. And, when we're sitting there going, well, the sex is really infrequent and the sex is really not that fun and the sex really isn't that good. Well, the world's idea of more sex and more technique and more outlandish and more this and more this and more this is not the answer. Yeah. The answer is deeper emotional, spiritual, and physical connection. That you want to dive deeper into the intimacy of your spouse, then actually dive deeper into all aspects of your spouse, emotionally, spiritually, serve one another, fill one another up with, like we talk about the 5 love languages from time to time. Like, is your partner, are you doing anything to fill their bucket? Yeah. Or are you just saying, my bucket's empty, my bucket's empty, my bucket's empty, And we need to pursue one another, and we need to chase after one another. And the craziest thing about this, and as I wrote this sermon, I was just like, nobody's going to believe this, is what marriage was designed for in the first place. Like, God says, hey, I need the world to know how Jesus loves the church. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have men marry women in this unbreakable love vow oath, and that'll point to the world how Jesus loves the church. There is no one alive that I've ever heard of that when they get married thinks, this is what we're doing. We're going to help point people to Jesus loving the church. Right. I mean, is that what you were thinking on your wedding day?
No.
It's not what I was thinking.
I was thinking, yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah. I mean, like,
I was not thinking that.
No, we think, I want to love this person. I want to spend my life with this person. This person makes me happy. I want to have kids with this person, whatever it is. We are not thinking this is a holy, sacred moment where I'm going to make a vow. Does my word matter? Does my word stand for anything? I'm going to make a vow before God and these witnesses that I'm going to love this person more than I love myself. Yeah. For better or worse, in sickness and in health, and until death do us part. And that no matter what, and that's why I love weddings. The day you walk off that platform and walk out into life, you have no idea what the next day holds. Right. But what you're saying in that is you have a partner for life.
No matter what.
No matter what.
Yeah.
You have a partner for life. I'm going to stand with you. I'm going to walk with you, even when it's ugly, even when it's hard, even when there's tough seasons. And Jesus says, like, look, there are a couple reasons you can get divorced. There's a couple. Infidelity, abuse, abandonment, neglect, and but we fell out of love. We don't have feelings for each other anymore. Mm-hmm. The intimacy's not good anymore. We have different goals in life now. We just aren't happy. We're fighting all the time. We're like, none of that is valid in Jesus' eyes. And so God's going like, look, this, you are breaking apart something that I intended to be unbreakable. Mm-hmm. And so people come at me and they're like, well, what if I married the wrong person? Like, what if the reason we got married was wrong? Mm-hmm. What if we hooked up in a bar one night and I got pregnant and I said, well, we should probably give this a go, and maybe we shouldn't have. Maybe we're completely the wrong people to be together. What do you say to that, Pastor? I say, is there adultery? Is there abuse? Is there neglect? Mm-hmm. Is there abandonment? Because if not, this is a picture of Christ loving the church. Yeah. And Christ loved a church that was very hard to love. And Christ sacrificed for a church that didn't deserve it. And Christ put himself lovingly for the church, even when he didn't get back what he deserved.
Right, yeah. Loving in a way, not doing things or loving in a way where you expect that to be reciprocated, because he didn't, because it was not possible. Right. Loving in a way where there was nothing in it for him.
Right.
At all.
And when we look at our marriage as, this is not about what I get and what I deserve and what I'm entitled to. This is about me putting somebody else first and building a life with them that points to Jesus. Well, I do think it's possible. Mm-hmm. I do think it's possible.
Yeah, one of the things that I think it would be just an interesting question to ask, or something to observe is, when the excuses start to bubble up.
Yeah.
Like, well, we fell out of love, or I married the wrong person, or show me the rest of your life outside of your marriage. Aside from your marriage, show me the rest of your life. Show me what you're doing aside from your marriage. How are you living? Show me that. Mm-hmm. Because I bet we could write bullet points down of what we would expect the reality of those lives, how they're being lived, decisions that are being made, choices that are being made. I bet we could bullet point those out and say, let's focus on this a little bit. Right. This is a mess. This is bad. This is not good. This is not healthy for you, for anybody.
And I came from divorced parents. My parents got divorced when I was 2. I don't really have any memory of them together. And they both have remarried. And, and that's the story of a lot of people is there's divorce in their past and they've remarried. And, well, what does God say about that? Well, look, and how I ended it was this. Look, the way God talks about intimacy, the word is the Hebrew word dode, the mingling of souls. That he is literally taking the two and making them one, and that God is the miracle worker. And I talked about this at the end of each sermon. The God who separated the sea, the God who walked on water, the God who made the world, the God who healed this, the God, he can repair a marriage. He can. Mm-hmm. I have sat with a couple that is divorced. Mm-hmm. We have one in our GraceHill story, and I won't say the name, but they've done a testimony video, not for us, but for a different church. where they were already in the process of divorce.
Yeah.
And one Sunday they looked across the room at church to each other. They happened to show up at the same service, sit on opposite sides of the church, and they were like, "Oh, this is awkward." Yeah. And during one of the songs, they happened to look over and catch eyes. And they both just had this sense of I don't know if I want to do this yet.
What was the song? Baby, come back.
Yeah.
You can blame it all on me. This is before your time. You probably don't even know that song.
There's something.
Oh, let's go.
I just can't live without you.
Dun, dun, dun.
Baby, come back. Yeah. So they catch eyes. And then they end up going out to lunch a day or two later. And they got remarried. Or not remarried, but they canceled the divorce. And they stayed together. And there was a couple that I know of in my past that they were divorced for years. Yeah. And it was ugly. It was all the stuff you know. And then one day, God just tugged on their hearts. And that's the thing. When you recognize that you are not going to fix your marriage. Yeah. And this is what I talk about with the people I meet with all the time. I say look, I'm not going to fix your marriage. And you can't fix your marriage because if you would, you already would have.
Yeah.
You need God to fix your marriage. Mm-hmm. So you need to submit yourself to God, saying, here's what I've done. Here's what I'm not doing right. You stop saying, they don't. And you start saying, here's what I don't. Because I sit every one of them down. I said, if you were going to fix this marriage, give me 3 things you would do right now. And you know what? They nail it every time. Mm. They're like, well, I'd stop, throwing dishes every time we get in a fight.
What would you do differently?
Yeah, what would you do? Well, I would stop, doing this and this and this. And I look at the other person, I go, would that help? They're like, yeah. And I'm like, and then what 3 things would you do? Mm-hmm. They nail it. They know what they need to do.
Sure.
The problem is they feel justified in not doing their part because they're angry and they're ticked off and they're spiteful at the other person for what they're doing. Of course.
It's a game. It's a game. Yeah. It's a chess match of okay, you made this move. Well, I'm going to make this move.
Right.
To protect myself.
Yes. And it's 2 sinful people locked in a room, that are hurting each other. Yeah. And in the end, hurting themselves.
Right.
And so I say, look, the answer's not in you. Pray that. What is the issue? Well, we haven't had sex in 3 years. Okay. Why? Well, she's like, I'm ticked off at him all the time, and I don't feel that anymore. Mm-hmm. I don't have any of those feelings. Okay. Start praying that God will give you those feelings back. Well, they're like, well, I don't want those feelings back. Well, okay, there's your problem.
Yeah.
You don't want to do this because it's fine. But I've had people that have come back and said, you know what, I changed my heart.
Yeah.
I was praying that God would give me the strength to forgive.
Yes.
And I have no idea how, because I was so ticked off that he cheated on me. I was so ticked off that he did this. Mm-hmm. But all of a sudden, I just have this peace with forgiving him.
Yeah.
And
if you haven't taken it to the Lord in prayer, stop everything else you're doing and go right there.
Yep.
Immediately.
And you have to want to try.
Well, but even still, if you're like, I don't want to try,
right?
Like you said, pray God, please change my heart. Change my heart. It's a miraculous thing. I'm telling you, I can't tell you the countless times that over these years of marriage where something's just been off, and you know what? I can't always identify even what it is.
No.
I don't know what it is. There's just something, and it makes me angry because I'm thinking, well, I don't know what it is. I don't know why it is. So I don't know how to fix this.
Right.
I don't know what to do differently.
Right.
I
just know you're the problem.
Right. I just know that she's the issue. Whatever it is, it's her.
Yeah.
But I will take it to God in prayer. And just a simple prayer. Just a simple prayer of God, please, you be at the center of our marriage.
Right.
Help me to be a better husband, a better spouse. Mm-hmm. Help her to be a better wife, a better spouse. Mm-hmm. And I just pray that your Spirit works within us to help through whatever it is. You don't have to know what it is. You don't have to want to be different or fix. I mean, you don't really have to. Pray that God changes your heart and helps to bring some peace and resolve in the house. And it is unreal. I can't tell you how many times. Like, we're fine, by the way.
Yeah.
We're not.
No,
we're not
I'll give
in
an example. Okay. My wife's number one love language is acts of service. To say I love you to my wife verbally means little. To do the dishes without being asked is like I bought her a million roses, right?
Yeah.
And that ticks me off because I hate doing chores. And to think that I have to do that in order for you to hear I love you really ticks me off because I don't want to. And so I know that sometimes I get in these funks where I haven't done my share of things around the house. And I will, on the way home, pray. Because, I've had a long day, and when I get home, I don't want to do anything. I'm selfish. And I admit this about myself. I'm a very selfish person. And if I don't daily fight myself on that, it gets ugly, you know, where I want to go home and I just want to be catered to.
Yeah.
I want all my kids to be well behaved so I don't have to deal with anything.
Or at least to not be misbehaving in my presence.
Right.
Go downstairs and misbehave.
But there will be days where on my way home I will pray, God, give me the heart and the strength and the compassion to step up. Right? And miraculously, when 99% of the time I want to just sit in that chair, turn on TV, do nothing. Like, I'll be like, I got the dishes. Let me do this. Let me do this. I'll get the kids ready for bed. Like God gives me the strength, and the patience, and the compassion to do that. And here's the reality. There are times I'm driving home, and I know I should pray for that, and I don't.
You're like, I don't want to pray for that because I don't want to do it.
Because I don't want to do it. Because I don't want to do it. But I'm being honest about that.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. If you want to try, God will help you.
Yeah.
But the problem is, so many of the times, we don't want to try.
Even in those instances, and I think this goes beyond this. There are times where I'm like, I don't want to pray.
Yeah.
I'm not in the mood to pray. I'm not in the mood.
God, I don't want you to fix it.
Yeah. Right.
How dumb is that?
Just open up your mouth and go. And by the way, like, sometimes you don't need to open your mouth. You know what I mean? Like, he knows.
He knows.
You missed out Friday night, and I'm going to ruin one joke.
Oh, okay.
Nate Bargatze.
Okay.
Gatsy, whatever.
We were supposed to go to Nate Bargatze, but we had one kid puking and another kid on her death's door, so we canceled.
So he was talking about his wife and his marriage, and he said, but I was driving one day and I was thinking to myself, well, I do my own laundry. I'm going to hold on to that. So he held on to it for months, and they got in a big fight. And he goes, I do my own laundry. And he goes, and that started a whole new fight. I didn't see that coming. Of course.
Yeah,
his delivery. But
yeah.
But it just take it to the Lord.
Yep.
I mean, who wants to hold on to, a contentious situation? Does. Exactly.
Satan wants us to fight.
In your ear, like,
you deserve
better. Yeah, that's not fair.
You're literally hurting yourself.
Gosh.
And then I want to make sure before we end, we hit on the last part of this real quick: the singles and the lust. Lust impacts married couples. And Jesus says, if your eye is causing you to sin, pluck it out. If your hand's causing you to sin, chop it off. It's better for one part of your body to be be lost than your whole body to be thrown into hell. Yeah. And God's saying, whatever it takes to clean up your thoughts, your mind, your eyes, your heart, that if you are constantly lusting, and lusting isn't just sexual. It's also the wife that's looking at the husband next door and sees, oh, look, he does everything over there. He, he's handy. He takes care of the kids. He, he does all the, like lusting is just wanting something that is not yours.
Yeah.
For your own gain.
Yeah.
It's wanting something that is not yours for your own gain.
Okay.
And so there are lots of ways that we lust. And God goes, if you don't learn to be ruthlessly serious about cutting it out of your life, you are going to destroy whatever it is you have.
Yeah.
And it starts all the way back when you're single. It starts with, making sure that you are keeping your purity about what you are looking for. And we talked about pornography, and we talked about just lust in general, that if you are single, I think a lot of times when we're single, we think, well, I'll clean it up once I get into a serious relationship, or I'll clean it up once I get married, or when that day comes, then I'll do things right, and that's not what you do. You got to be the person that's worth marrying now. If you're a young man, you need to walk with integrity now.
Yeah.
You need to not put yourself in, exactly what I talked about earlier. If you're one of these people that your dates end, with you on a couch at midnight watching Netflix and chilling, I have people that come to me and they're like, oh, I got into a bad marriage because, I got pregnant. Well, you know how you don't?
How'd you get there?
Don't put yourself in a bad situation like that. And don't put yourself in that tempting situation. Don't convince yourself, well, I can't wait till I'm 25 and get married. Like, I'm 18. I got urges I need to be taken care of now. That is a sex crazed culture teaching you that you deserve all this and you are entitled to all this and have it now. And young ladies, it's the same thing. Like, I use the phrase, do not compete, captivate. It is not your job to compete with the world to entice him and to keep him occupied. And I don't want him cheating on me, so I better do all these things for him.
Oh, I don't want him to leave me. I don't want him to break up with me.
You're not his prostitute.
Right.
Because he buys you dinner. I mean, we make that joke all the time. Well, buy me dinner for, and you think young ladies don't hear that?
Right.
Well, if he takes you out on a nice date and everything, you kind of owe
it to him.
Right.
Yeah.
And captivate this man. Show him your beauty, all of your beauty. And young men, show them your chivalry. Show them the man you are.
You said about your wife when you saw her, you're like, okay, I got to step it up here.
Right.
Like, I got to change. I got to be different. I got to be better.
I was a boy when I met her.
Yes.
Even though I was 22.
You were a grown, yeah.
I was a boy who could shave.
Yeah.
And very quickly, this woman had a full-time job. She worked nights and days. She had her own apartment. She had her own car. She paid her own bills. She did and I was like, oh, I got to step up.
Yeah.
And, and early in the dating, I mean, she dumped me 2 weeks in and I had to get her back. There were multiple times where she was on the verge of dumping me, of like, you are not living up to what I expect of you. And I got resentful because I was like, she was like, my dad, I was like, I'm not your dad, but he is a great man. He is. And I realized if I want this girl, I've got to shape up. Mm-hmm. I've got to do these things. Yeah. I've got to take care of these things. I got to be responsible. I got to be a man. One day I'm going to walk her down the aisle and say, hey, or I'm going to stand at the end of the aisle and say, I can take care of this woman now. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't ready. And I stepped up because I found a woman that captivated me enough to say, I'm going to change. Yeah. And so you got to work on your lust because it will destroy you. It will absolutely destroy you. And if you're struggling with this, if you're a dude right now and you're struggling with this, look, you are not alone.
Nope.
This is in Christian men. This is in married men. This is in single men. This is something that we come and talk about and be like, Pastor, I'm addicted to porn. It is unhealthy. Or I'm addicted to lust. I am, like, everywhere I go, I'm just checking out women and fantasizing about women. Mm-hmm. And if you're a woman and you're like, I'm so unhappy in my marriage, all I'm doing is fantasizing about all these other, scenarios and guys, and
right.
We just need to be honest about that stuff, and we can come and talk about those things. And if it's not me that you talk to, there's other people you can talk to. But it also, like, if your marriage is miserable, it breaks my heart, the marriages that come in and they're like, well, we're just staying together for the kids, but it's been awful for 5 years. Mm-hmm. I'm like, and you're just now? And they're like, well, we're getting divorced.
Oh,
it's like, you're just now coming to talk. You're just now coming to say there's an issue. And it's been miserable, but you waited until the kids were older or whatever it is. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Come work on it now.
One last point that I would like to make is, if you have in your friend group or your family people that are supporting you in your bad behavior, your bad choices, and your bad decisions,
Sure.
you need to get them out. Much as you pluck your eye out,
Right.
if it's causing you to sin, get people in your lives who actually care about you,
Tell you
who
the
want the
hard
best for you, who hold you accountable. Because if you're just looking to those people who are like, yeah, you're right, you do deserve better.
Right.
Yeah, she's not this, she's not that, or he's not this. I'm telling you, those people are miserable, and misery loves company, and they love to take you down. They're not your friends. They don't love you. They don't care about you. Get into a small group.
Yeah.
Get yourself right. Get in the book. Get on your knees and get in prayer.
Yeah.
And right the ship, because it is possible.
It is.
God, this is the God of miracles. He is the way maker, and we've seen it time and time again. I've experienced it. You have too. Don't just look for the easy button.
I've
here.
seen so many marriages turn around. I've been a part of helping marriages turn
Same.
around. It's possible.
Yeah. Great messages.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We
for
got
the time.
Ash Wednesday
That's right. Tomorrow.
tomorrow.
That's right.
Well, by the time this
Today.
comes out, yeah,
It'll be, yeah. We'll
it'll be
in it.
gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, God bless.
God bless you guys.